Welcome to Darshan Talks, powered by the Kulkarni Law Firm. This podcast explores the challenges and opportunities facing FDA-regulated companies. Join us as we discuss the latest trends, news, and insights with experts and executives in the field.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Darshan Talks. I have here with us the perennially popular Dave Bulger. You may not be able to see him between the trees and his shirt, so it is very confusing, but I promise you he is there. We will then have Dave tell us a little bit more about himself, and we'll talk about emerging AI and what it means now. So Dave, on to you. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Dave Bulger. I am founder and chief operating officer of a company called Tuzag. We specialize in a platform that allows companies to rapidly develop conversational AI digital concierges, right? So if a chatbot's not good enough for you, and a chatbot really is sort of a decision tree based transactional bit of tech, we're looking at how can we develop a true conversational concierge that doesn't take up a human, right? And so one of the things we'll talk about today is, so what's the difference between generative AI, which is, all the rage right now, and conversational AI?
So let's ask this question. You mentioned this idea of generative AI, conversational AI. The other term I've heard is LLMs. What do all of these terms mean? And then I've heard generalized AI versus, I forget, something else. So what is AI? Do we have AI? And is that different from machine learning? And how does it all come together to where we are today?
Sure. So if you think of all of these as sort of related or building blocks, right? Let's start with, traditional AI principles, right? Natural language processing. So can I take a piece of speech from someone and turn that waveform into something the computer can understand, right? So machine learning, basic, we used to call it when I had black hair, predictive modeling, right? So machine learning is really, how do you write the appropriate algorithms to determine insights from a large data set, right? And then neural networks, which are really, how do I chain together reasoning to create a result? So when you think of a large language model, that's what LLM stands for. Large language models are the neural net sets that are being used to, and a lot of machine learning stuff in here, right? All the algorithms, just think of all of it, all the cookie cutter stuff that has to go in to figuring out how to create a generative AI response, right? And so,
wait, I want to stop you there. Yeah. To create a generative AI response, what does the word generative AI mean?
So generative AI is the classification. I don't know how broadly it's being used, but amongst people I respect, we're all calling ChatGPT and Bard and Dolly and all of this class of, we're going to go out and take a prompt and look through our models and return a response, right? So we're going to generate a response based on a query. We're getting really good at that because the large language models that have been developed, and there are numerous ones, right? So if you go back a little way, Da Vinci is a very popular large language model, right? So there are a lot of those, but the OpenAI folks who built ChatGPT and Google, who's got Bard going, they have developed these large language models, which are a combination of predictive algorithms and a neural net framework that has gone out and largely, and this is one of the downsides, right? It's scraped the World Wide Web and has written really sophisticated ways of looking at both unsupervised and supervised data to figure out what to say in response to a query. So they are generating a response based on these large language models to return you something intelligent. And the challenge with those models is like, that very cool song that Drake and The Weeknd did not do, that, got pulled. That's going to be, sort of where we sit in legal land for a while. Very cool song. And it was basically, it leveraged these large language models to say, hey, if Drake and The Weeknd wrote a song about this, what would it sound like? And it was really darn good. And that's what we mean when we talk about generative AI. A lot of the artwork, I was reading something this morning about, I think it was a German photographer won a contest and then told everybody, yeah, that was done through generative AI. So, it's like, it is a way to come up with something reasonably intelligent by querying the AI. The challenge with that is the AI doesn't know what it's returning, right? And so that's where it gets to be problematic. It's just as confident when it's wrong as it is when it's right. And that, is where I think and that'll get better over time, but what we have at our disposal now is as opposed to, this is where sort of engineers and content creators may diverge a little bit from the salespeople and the venture capitalists who don't actually understand this stuff. It's like, this is a really cool tool right now. It is not a panacea. It is not, I can't just plug this in and let it go. Like, if I'm running Bank of America, I'm not suddenly turning all my chatbots into generative AI things, right? There's no refereeing. Right. And so when you think about this, and this is the transition into conversational AI, right? The purpose of conversational AI is allow you to have a meaningful conversation with a non-human agent. Right. And as we explore the boundaries of conversational AI, what we're trying to do is figure out how to put a conversation in context of the topic, in the context of the person having the conversation, and the history of conversations that have been had previously. So, that's when you think about, again, we've talked about this before, when you think about Data's positronic brain, right, from Star Trek: The Next Generation, that is the ultimate evolution of conversational AI. He is able to be a subject matter expert because the rules that are inside his conversational AI are based on enough different inferences to produce the right conversational thing back, right? So, where we stand today, in sort of my perspective, is generative AI tools are extraordinary tools for accelerating content development, right? So if I'm a writer, I can write faster by querying ChatGPT, for instance, or Bard, right? And saying, hey, I need, give me the top 10, sleep tips for somebody who's got insomnia, right? And then because I also happen to be a subject matter expert, can review that content and say, okay, 8 of those 10 are legit. I don't know where the other 2 came from, so I will get rid of those, right? And then I can add them into my knowledge base for my conversational AI, so that it can use those things. But notice that we're talking about a series of review gates here that the generative AI is not capable currently of doing on its own. So if we think about this from a shameless pitch to the world of Tuzag stuff, but if we're talking about working with a pharmaceutical brand to build a patient support program, a concierge for a patient support program, we need to make sure that everything the digital concierge is capable of saying is reviewable by medical and legal folks, right? So, because we don't want right now, what you get back from generative AI is in no way, shape, or form reviewed, right? You're asking the generative AI tool to look through the large language model based on my query and send me something back. It has no idea how well refereed that is, whether it is violating copyright, like how much you're allowed to use it outside of the returned result is just not there, right? So in conversational AI, we need to be able, think of it almost like a constrained language model, right? Where everything that the conversational AI concierge can say is housed in a library that is reviewable and maintainable by subject matter experts. And so what we're looking at using, and we use it in a couple of interesting ways, right? One, so a lot of our natural language processing, so in other words, figuring out what you have typed in or said verbally, we do it with voice, we do it with text, the whole 9 yards, right? So whatever the input string ends up being, we need to be able to take that string and convert it into usable things to go search a knowledge base to return something intelligent. And so in order to do that, think of just a thesaurus on steroids. And one of the great uses we found for generative AI is we'll say, hey, in the context of this question, these are the types of things we think might be answered. What are all of the different ways somebody might say that? Now, if I give that to a writer, it's going to take them an hour or so to figure that out, right? And they're going to do basically the same Google searches, ironically, that Bard will do for you in 2 seconds.
Right.
And so now I've now gotten a better thesaurus for my NLP, and I've gotten it faster.
Right.
So one very good use case. The other use case is thinking of this as your generative AI assistant in writing prompts. So I'm going to write a first draft, and then I'm going to say, hey, make this better. And I need some facts around, this particular point. And so to the extent that I don't need to have citations, because again, from generative AI, you don't know where they got it. Hell, they don't know where they got it. Right? That's sort of the beauty and the ugliness of a large language model is they don't come with metadata that tells you the 19 places that this particular tree used to return the query, right? And so if I'm doing this for scientific or for purposes of, hey, back up what you wrote, I got to do that still with a human. But I can get 90% of the way there, for things that don't need citations and stuff like that. I can write faster by just basically having the generative AI tool support me in my development of my knowledge base for my conversational AI tool.
So I have about 19 questions I can go down.
I saw it, and when I saw your arm start to hurt, I stopped talking.
Let's start with the basic one, which I thought was really surprising, and in retrospect was stupid, but I'm gonna ask it anyways. One of the things that in my head we were all doing was we have now achieved a way for AI to communicate back to us, or to have a system communicate back to us, which I thought was amazing. In my head, there was only one way to do it. What you're sort of emphasizing is there are, as you put it, multiple models out there. Bard and ChatGPT, I keep saying ChatGPT 3, but ChatGPT are just two of the models. Has there been, as far as you know, much of a discussion about the models that haven't shown up yet? Do we know anything about, are those models better? Or are we sort of just happy where we are and this becomes the new de facto standard and Betamax sort of moves away and we keep moving on?
There are a ton of large language models, right? So again, basically, if you've got kids that understand how to construct these things, you can train them, depending on how much computational power you have, you can train them pretty well, right? That's why Da Vinci's pretty expensive, because it uses a lot of computing power to generate its results. Better results, right? And so you kind of get what you pay for. And there's a lot of, I don't want to get too far out of now I'm understanding it sort of as a user as opposed to a builder. But when we go on and we go, okay, look, we want to plug Chat GPT-3, or we want to plug in GPT-4, right?
Right.
And whatever comes after it. One of the options you get in any of these is, well, which of the large language models we use do you want to pay for? And I'll give you this Model X. I can't remember all the names, right? I'll give you a Model X for 0.004 cents a token. But I'll give you a Y, which is bigger, better, faster, but computationally more expensive. I got to give you that for a half cent a token, right? Making up all of the numbers. But relatively speaking, you're going, okay, sometimes I need to be very sure that it's going to come back with something legit, right? Sometimes I just need, what's the weather in Peoria today, right? I can only ask Bard that because it's the only one doing real-time stuff, but it'll come back with that, right? So sophisticated search queries without returning. So think of it just the way I explain it to friends, right? So if I go on Google now and I write a really good query, right? Well, 9 times out of 10, it will auto-complete the query because you are almost never the first person to ask Google something, right? But then it returns me a series of links, right? And inside those links, I can then go in and find my answer. What Bard's doing for you is not only doing the search on all of the things that it returns, it is figuring out inside the content of those sites how to answer your question. That's a big deal, right? So that's the next evolution. And I think that's where they're trying to get, I don't use Bing very much, but I think that's where Microsoft's trying to get Bing, to do that sort of stuff too. Like, this is very useful. Would I allow it to talk to my customer base in real time? Well, no, because the price of being wrong to Bard is way less than the price of me being wrong to you, right? So I need to be able to referee this stuff. And that's where I think the interstitial part of the conversation is having somebody to referee what's coming back from the large language model.
So I'm thinking about, let's say I am big pharma company A, and big pharma company A is going, I'm going to use this so that if I get a question about my drug, I'm willing to pay the extra money to get the amazing large language model.
Yep.
And because I pay the extra money, I'm going to get better results. Is that necessarily true, or are we still dealing with systems that just aren't, like, they're good, they're better than the alternative, but they aren't great yet, so the risk is too high?
Yeah, they are. We are not at a point in 2023 where if I were consulting to a pharmaceutical brand, I would say, yeah, feel free to hook your chatbot up to this and just let it run. Because first time it's wrong, FDA is coming in and shutting you down. Right. So, and that's not even hyperbole. That's how that works. Right. And so does it speed up if I think about this from either if I'm the brand manager and I'm talking to my agency or my concierge developer, I can expect them to charge me differently. They should be able to speed up the timeline quite a bit, because now agency, use your subject matter experts. They can use the generative AI to return a bunch of content and then make that content their own, right? Because let's not, just from a pure creative perspective, we haven't figured out the law yet on how this is infringing copyrights.
Correct.
Right? So, I mean, they can't even figure out if Ed Sheeran stole from Marvin Gaye yet. So this is the cautionary tale for us, right? what can generative AI do for us today? It can accelerate the building of a far more robust content library.
Right.
Because what am I going to do as the content creator? I'm going to use generative AI as my helper. I'm going to take what they bring back and then I'm going to voice it myself. Right? I'm going to verify with the subject matter expert that this is a true thing to say. And then I'm going to go, but I can get to market way faster now. Right? So, because it is returning a lot of any of them are returning a lot of valuable content. But I need to make sure that that content is ready for prime time.
Now, do you see AI being used? And I'm just actively thinking about use cases here.
Sure.
But if I was the FDA, I would start going, I don't want you to submit applications to me anymore. I want you to submit raw data. I will query it and have it develop the answer for me instead of me trying to read what one might argue is effectively a sales pitch, saying that this is the application, here's why it's a good idea. Instead, I can just go, show me the data, we'll analyze it, and have the AI give us answers. Are we anywhere close to that reality yet? Or are we?
I would say close, probably. I mean, I don't have to generate my own SQL queries anymore, right? I can put it in and say, hey, I need a SQL query that gets me this information from this table, and it writes me the join, right? And I can just copy paste it and put it in, right? It writes pretty good HTML.
Yeah.
So yeah, we are getting closer and closer for this being an excellent tool for enhancing the skill sets of our experts.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe we can replace our experts yet. An expert being everywhere from your junior front end developer may be able to go faster. Think of, and I think I saw Stack Overflow actually said, hey, don't be scraping us for your model. But we've been joking around about, oh, great, it's the new Stack Overflow. Is I say, hey, ChatGPT, give me, I need, a Lambda for this.
Sure.
And out it comes. And it's like, yay, right? So great tool, great for accelerating the work process. You see this a lot in stuff. AI is not taking your job. Somebody who knows how to use AI is going to take your job.
That's a great line.
I can accomplish more work faster by manipulating the generative AI tools.
I think that's reality, not just, as you said, you mentioned Stack Overflow, which is more for developers, if you will.
Yeah.
But I know lawyers who are doing the exact same thing, we as a large multi-billion-dollar law firm had developed all these templates to do all this stuff. Well, forget that. I'll just have ChatGPT spit something out to me that is pretty as good as some of those templates. I still have to amend the templates and I still have to amend this write-up, but it gets me to a starting point that's honestly probably a little bit better than the template I was using previously.
Oh, yeah.
So that I think is the future.
Yeah. If you ask it to write it like Aaron Sorkin would write it, you're going to get something that you could, read on the stand. So it is really good for that, right? Because what has it done? It's probably sucked in all of. Is Westlaw still a thing?
Westlaw's still a thing, but it could pull it directly from the SEC website itself.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. So yeah, it's like it can do all that stuff.
Yeah.
Right. So what it does is it makes your job easier. It doesn't replace you.
So let me ask you this question. Does it replace medical writers, though, in that the version you and I just spoke about, where the future is the regulator goes, give me your data. Yeah. I don't want you analyzing the data. We'll analyze it ourselves because we can query it. But medical writers were in a world where they were writing this contextualized write-up saying, here's this, here's this, here's this, here's what it all means. And then FDA read that version of the truth and then did their own analysis. But now FDA can directly go to the data and ask it those questions.
Yeah, the part I would suggest caution on is the what it means part.
Okay, go on.
Right? So what it's going to, because it doesn't know whether what it's it cannot tell you whether it's right or wrong.
Yep.
Or what synthesize the response, I think is the deal, right? That still requires a level of experience and education. That is just it's not reasonable to ask generative AI of that yet.
You use the word yet. And to be fair, everything is in the word yet because we are in the super nascent stages of AI.
Yeah,
so we
exactly.
have no idea what the future looks like.
Yeah, my biggest fear is that a bunch of yahoos start thinking this is the be all end all, and then it blows up in everyone's faces, and then nobody gets funded and we don't get cool toys anymore. Right? Because these are cool toys, but they are, they make my job easier. They don't replace me because I can call BS on them. They cannot call BS on me.
So I have a model that I've never seen actually discussed, but I always think that any new technology or any new entrant has to go through its phase. There's this initial phase of hype. Everyone thinks it's the greatest thing ever. Then there's a crisis, which is the total drop in faith. And then reality kicks in and you sort of go from there. And eventually that new reality is the reality you live with. I feel like crypto just had that moment where you kind of went, oh, crypto is the greatest thing ever. It's better than gold. It's better than securities. Total crash. But it'll come back, and it'll come back in a way that's smarter, wiser, blah, blah, blah. AI kind of is in its initial moment of, oh, this is the greatest thing ever. There will be there has to be a crisis. Without that crisis, you aren't going to have reality sink in. But we're seeing some of those early crises, if you will. And those early crises, for example, has been this idea that AI is making stuff up. And I'll give you my own examples where I'll tell it, tell me, I did this search, I think. Tell me 5 court cases involving a pharmacy where blah, blah, blah happened. And it spit out 5 at me. I was like, this is amazing. I had no idea what these cases were. You look into them, none of them existed, but they looked totally legit.
Yeah.
And I was blown away because I was like, this is incredible. Because I don't have to do any more Westlaw searches. I don't have to do any more. What's the other one?
Lexis. That's still a thing?
Lexis is still a thing.
Okay. Sorry, the last time I was in a law class was like the 80s. So,
it's been 20 years for me too. But that's my point.
Well,
go ahead.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it is right now a benevolent sociopath, right? It's just trying to make you happy.
Right.
The fact that it is, and it doesn't know it's wrong. It doesn't know it made stuff up, right? Because it's not sentient. It is a series of algorithms based on your queries. It goes in and looks through the large language model and figures out, what might be right. The fact that it may have had to fabricate those cases, it doesn't know that's wrong. Right?
Which is hilarious to me.
Yeah. So benevolent. I mean, right? It is trying to make you happy. It does not know that giving you something incorrect does not make you happy.
See, I think there's a difference between incorrect and making things up. To me, incorrect would be reading something wrongly.
Fair.
Making things up is wholesale creation. To me, it is more akin to and there's nothing wrong with this part. Well, there's lots of things wrong with this, to be fair. This idea of taking an image, taking out the pixels and reorganizing them to form a completely different image. I believe that's diffusion. And it got into trouble because the argument was, are you still the same picture? You just moved it around, and who owns the copyright on that? But to me, when you do that with words, you take content and you turn it around, maybe those words don't mean what you need it to mean, and that's a problem. But when you wholesale just create words that don't exist for fact patterns that don't exist, to me, there's something more worrisome. And I'm working on a write-up right now, and I asked ChatGPT to come up with an initial draft. I compared it to what I know the final product should look like.
Yeah.
And I couldn't even get it to be similar enough.
Right.
Where I just had to rewrite the whole thing.
Yeah.
So my question for you is, in terms of us growing, what is the next step? What is the next iteration of AI? Is it just cleaning up this model that exists right now, or is there a bigger plan out there?
Yeah. So from my perspective, I think what we need to see, because what you described is, I think, an issue for medical, for legal, for kind of the professional realms, right? If you're doing chit chat or trying to, figure out, this is better than Spark Notes, tell me what, Hamlet was about, right?
Yeah.
I think it's fine. But the models are not precise. The where they're scraping need to be constrained. So there probably needs to be a large language model for lawyers, right? And then you probably need to also go, well, property law is vastly different than, criminal law.
Yeah.
So I might need a criminal law large language model, right? And so I think we're going to have to start to make sure that the words that are available to the generative AI are constrained a bit.
Right.
Right, which is also a way to get rid of a lot of the racist and pornographic stuff, which they're doing. They're trying to weed those out of the models as they exist now.
Yeah.
But it's hard to say, okay, I have scraped the internet.
Yeah.
Now just talk about legal stuff, right? Because God forbid, it also scraped from a Reddit, a bunch of Redditors who think they're lawyers because they watch The West Wing. And so it's Boston Legal, one of those, sorry. You know what I mean? So
I do.
I think that's where we need to head with the science. They probably are. Nobody calls me before they do this stuff, but I haven't seen it yet. But I think, when you start talking about pharma, right? It's like, if you're going to, and I just think it's a mistake right now to just let this thing run loose, right? But could generative AI be a support tool for a pharmaceutical brand if I was able to train it on the disease state, right? And so let's say I have a disease state large language model. That large language model might be a good component for a physician assistant model, right?
Yeah.
But the notion is I need to make sure that everything in the language model is trustworthy. That has not been a requirement up to this point, as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
And we still, none of this solves for the fact that it just doesn't know if it's wrong.
Right. So again, as always, Dave, we're well past time, and we barely scratched the surface. Yeah. But any parting words?
I think that as folks are trying to figure out how to leverage generative AI, stop thinking of it as a replacement for your talent and start thinking of it as a talent optimizer.
I love it. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Darshan Talks. Remember, the information we discuss is for educational purposes only and is not legal advice. For additional valuable insights and updates, be sure to subscribe to our newsletter at DarshanTalks.com. Darshan Talks is powered by the Kulkarni Law Firm.